We're continuing to learn some of the techniques and commands to be able to summarize data in Python. So this example starts with the Bank Loans2 Python notebook. We won't need to install the Pandas data reader because we did it previously. But we'll go ahead and run this cell here to import the commonly used libraries. And here we're importing the bank loans Excel file. It should be saved in the same folder as you saved the bank loans to Python notebook. And then we've got here the dataset.info, and the important thing that shows us is the column numbers, the column names, the number of rows, which is 5,000, and the data type. All right, so we know from last time that education and state are object variables or text variables. So one thing we're going to do, another way we can get a list of the values that are in this and actually turn it into a list is to use the unique command. So we're going to save a list, and we're going to save a list of the values that are in the state field, and we're only going to save the unique values. Okay, now, Python has run this cell because there's a number in the brackets, but if we want to see this, we're going to have to run it and then go ahead and call the state list again so we can see the values. Now, one thing that might be useful is if we want to sort these in alphabetical order, we can first run this sort command on the list. And now they're in alphabetical order. Let's do the same thing for the education values. We'll create the education list using the unique command, and then we'll go ahead and sort the list. And then when we just type simply the name of the list, educ list, and run that, it will actually display the list. Now, suppose with this bank customers data set, we want to know which of the customers are most likely to take out a personal loan. We see that there is a column called personal loan. So let's check the value counts for that column. And we see that of these 5,000 customers, 480 of them have taken out a personal loan. Now, what we're going to do next is create a new data frame, a table, that counts the number of customers that took out a personal loan in each state by each education category. So what we need is to create a blank table. Let's call it the count table. And we're going to create it. The object in Python is called a data frame. So this is going to be a command to create a new data frame. And we'll have the columns be equal to the values in our state list, and the rows be equal to the values in our education list. Python uses the term index to mean the rows in the table. And so this is an empty table. NaN means not a number. So it's just a way that Python says this cell is empty. Now, to populate this table, we need to learn some commands that will allow us to sum up some of the rows in a data set. And so we're going to use the LOC command. And so if we use dataset.loc, remember, I like to put the brackets there and put a comma in the middle. To the right of the comma, Python wants to know what column we want to sum. In this case, we're going to sum. We're going to count the number of people in this data set. And we know that if they had took out a personal loan, they have a 1. So every time it counts a 1, it's going to count a person with a personal loan. Now the question is, what rows do we want to sum? And what we would like to do is sum all the rows taken out by advanced professional degree holders. This is just an example. So what we need to do is put a criteria. Instead of a row number here, we'll put a criteria. So the criteria will be on the field education. So what we're telling here, everything to the left of the comma says, look at the field education, and if it's equal to the first value in the education list, if we go back to the education list, advanced professionals the first value, we want to sum that row. So it's going to pick out the rows that it sums in this way. And so we see that there's 205. Okay, so you can repeat that command to sum the number of loans taken out in Arkansas. Now, what about the number of loans taken out by advanced professional degree holders in Arkansas? So that's two different criteria. So if we put dataset.loc, we'll put the brackets in a comma, rows to the left, columns to the right, and we know we're going to sum. We're going to sum the personal loan column. What's left to put in is two criteria to the left of the comma. And so the way we'll put two criteria in is we'll have two sets of parentheses. The first criteria will be here, second criteria will be here. The criteria are both going to be of this type of a format. Remember, 0 is just the first element in a Python list because Python counts from 0. So we want to have education equal to the first value in the education list. That's the first criteria. Same criteria as here. And then our criteria on state for Arkansas Arkansas is the first value in the state list. Now, what's going to be frustrating at times is having the parentheses in the right place and all the other punctuation. So you just have to be really careful and get used to checking, very careful to make sure that's in the right place. Okay, so that's 12 total customers. Now, if we look at our table, that's the number we would like to display in the upper left column of the table. So we're eventually going to do that. Let's just call that this value a variable. So I'm going to call that the Arkansas advanced variable and just copy all of this here. The purpose is just because we want to save that number to a variable called arcadv. And now what we can do is we can take that variable and populate it into our table. All right, that's pretty simple. We'll do counttable.loc. We know we need a comma. So in our count table, our rows are the education levels. So we'll have the row for advanced professional and the column for Arkansas, and then an equal ARCADV. Notice when we use the equal sign in a criteria, we use two equal signs. Here, this is called an assignment. So we're actually making that cell in the table equal to this number. So if we run that, and then we look at our count table again, we've got 12 in our table. All right, so we don't want to just continue to use this type of assignment for every cell in the table and build this type of criteria every time. That would take us a little bit too long a time. So we'd like to have a better solution. So what we can do is use the concept of a loop. Now these two cells are just going to be a practice loop. So here we have a list of numbers called digits. It's just a list of numbers. And what if we wanted to sum those up? Well, one thing we could do is use a loop. In other words, we could go through each cell and add that to a cumulative sum. So let's do this. Let's define a variable called sum and just make it equal to 0. And then we'll start the loop. A loop starts with the term for. And what we want to do is go through from the first value in digits to the last. So LE in digits is length of digits. So we go from the 0 position, which is the first, to the last one. The last one must be equal to the length. And then after that line, Python expects a colon. Now if we hit enter, it will tab, and now what we'll do is we'll add to our sum the current value in digits. So what happens here is when I is 0, the sum is going to add the first value in digits, which is the 0 value. It's going to then assign that as the new value of sum. Then it's going to change I to 1, and so the new value of sum is going to be 2, and then it's going to add the second value of digits, which is 4, and so on until it sums all the digits. Now, one thing I forgot to do is actually put the cursor in here and run digits, so I better do that. Now let's see if we get a result. Okay, now what we need to do is we can use this cell here to insert a cell, and if we want to see the value that's in sum, we'll just have to type that. It's 1121. Okay, so in the next video, we'll use the concept of a loop to populate this table.